Hello and welcome to our Kokedama workshop. My name's Belinda and I'm going to be teaching you today how to make your very own Kokedama. Now this is one I made quite a little while ago. So what a Kokedama is we're going to encase our plant's roots in a ball using some string so that they don't need a pot. You can hang these guys up or you can put them on a tray or something just to catch the moisture as well. So this one is just over a year old, and I bent the leaf there as I was bringing it out. I just wanted to show you what's happening now. Can you see here? So this one, the roots are coming out the bottom here. And so what I can do now with this one is actually put another layer and make it a slightly larger ball. I'm not going to do that today. But you can actually then, as your plant gets bigger, you can actually make your Kokedama a little bit bigger too. Okay, I'm going to put them to the side. So what we need for our Kokedamas, so we need some string. I use some twine or jute string, whatever string you use. It is going to, you want something that is going to break down, so not something that is plastic coated or anything like that. We are going to be using sphagnum moss. Now this I have soaked overnight, just for a couple of hours is fine too. It comes like this. There's a smaller bag or a larger bag, and you can see that it's all dried out. So this is a moss that's been dried. We want it nice and moist for this exercise. So I've got it here in my bucket. It's dripping wet right now. So this is a little bit messy. It's going to get messy. I'm outside and there's a really good reason for that. The other thing we're going to need is a mixture, and this one looks like, seriously looks like mud pies the girls make. It's a mixture of coir peat or peat moss, and again soaked, and potting mix. Now it's around 50% each-ish, up to you. The peat moss just helps it to the moisture stay there a little bit longer. And again, I've soaked this for a few hours overnight, up to you. And we want to really make sure there's no, like, all of the peat is it comes in a brick. I've used all of it in here, but it comes in a brick, and we want to make sure there's no lumps left over. So this one looks like a little bit of a lump, so we want to make sure that there's no dry bits in the middle of those. As I said, we are going to get messy today. Okay, so the first part we're going to do is we're going to grab 2 pieces of string or twine, about a meter or so long, doesn't really matter, and we're going to make a knot in the middle. There's no special tying here. I'm just literally tying one around the other. I want to make a cross, and approximately in the middle. And then I'm going to lay out my twine. So I've got a big cross in the middle there. Can you guys see that? Just a little bit of glare there. So there's a cross, and we've got our 4 strings. Now what we are going to do is put down a nice thick layer of our sphagnum moss. Now, if you are doing this inside, I would recommend putting something down. Things are going to get a little bit messy. So put down some plastic mat or something like that, or do it outside, even easier. Okay, so we can give it a little squeeze. We do want to keep some of that moisture though, and we are going to put a nice big thick layer of sphagnum moss right there in the middle. So it's about almost, it's probably 2 centimeters thick, and the size of a small plate, so sort of that size. We're gonna build on this later. So that's going to go down first. Actually, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. You can see it's a little bit messy, but that's okay. Okay, so I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. Okay, then we're going to put on some of our mix. Now, as you can see, this is very goopy. There's a lot of water there. So what we're going to do is, just as I pull it out, just going to drain it off a little bit, and water is probably going to go everywhere. Now we don't need a lot of this mix. I'm just going to put a little mound in the middle there. Okay, so it kind of looks like a big cookie with a massive choc chip on top, as my girls call it when they make theirs. Okay, what we are then going to do, now this is going to make quite a large-ish Kokedama. You can make smaller ones. The smaller that you make them, the more you have to keep watering them, because the water will evaporate more quickly. So we're going to grab our plant. Now this is a zygocactus, which is actually a succulent. I recommend using a plant that doesn't need a lot of, guess what? I just found a caterpillar on there. We're not going to put the caterpillar in there. So I would recommend using a plant that doesn't mind if it dries out and doesn't mind if it gets its feet wet. So we don't want to use a traditional cactus with, you know, the ones with the spikes all over them, because they really don't like getting their feet wet. And when you soak them at the end and every few weeks, they get quite damp. I'd also not recommend using something like a fern, because they don't like to dry out at all, really. And what happens is the process with the kokedama is they go from quite wet to almost dried out and quite wet again as we soak them, depending on how often you soak them. So something like a succulent or a flowering plant or a begonia could be really nice, as well as these zygo cactuses as well. So I'm going to grab this one out from its pot. It's going to come, it's going to come. There we go. Now I am actually going to get rid of a bit of this dirt because it's been in this pot for quite a while. So I'm just going to tease the roots out a little bit. Get rid of some of that dirt and give it the new mix that we've made. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I've left its root system intact, and what I'm going to do now is actually place it just on top of this little mound. I'll make a little bit of a hole. Place it on top like this, and then we're just going to cover the roots nice and gently with a little bit more of this peat and potting mix. Now this is going to look really messy, and we've got to hold everything in place as we go. That's okay. And I just try and keep everything together. At this stage, would be really nice if we had another set of hands. Okay, so we've made our little ball. Now the more, as I said, the more potting mix you put in here, the longer that it will stay nice and moist. Smaller amount, smaller kokedama, all good, but you will just have to keep it moist a little bit more. Now the next thing, we've got our little, almost like a volcano here. So lava going out the top. What we're going to do next is we're going to grab some of our sphagnum moss, and we're going to put a fairly thick layer that is going to then cover all of our dirt and potting mix and peat moss and potting mix. Now, don't be too perfect about this. It is a work of art, and a kokedama doesn't need to be perfectly round. What we are doing is we're protecting the roots with the sphagnum moss. Just make sure there's no gaps. We can always fill in the gaps a little bit later. So when we have this is actually going to be quite a large one. Here we go. Okay, so when we've got our first sort of structure there, what we're going to do is, remember how we had the cross of string underneath it? We're going to grab these and we're going to twist it over the top, right next to our plant, and we're going to tie it up. There's no fancy knots here, nothing too, glamorous or anything, but what we want to do is just do it tight enough that our sphagnum moss stays there, but not so tight that we cut through the whole thing. Okay, tie it like this. So one there. I'm going to do the other one as well. I might go around this side so you guys can see. So you're just pulling it in just gently. Now bits and pieces are going to fall off. Don't stress about that. Oops. Step. As we go, bits and pieces will fall off. But what we're going to do is we're going to tie the whole thing up with some more string. So just be a little bit gentle with your plant. And so here is our our work of art. Now I've just lost a little bit of moss on this side, so I'm just going to tuck it in gently there. Now if you tried to pick this up right now, it's probably all going to fall apart. So what we're going to do, now I like to work with lengths of string. You can do this all in one piece of string. I just use a length at a time just so I don't get all muddled up with my string. Now, if these pieces are long enough and you can go underneath and do another, around and another tie, all good. I usually just leave these to last and work on them a little bit later. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab our next string, pop them out of the way, And we're going to try and get underneath as best we can, underneath our kokedama. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to tie a knot. It doesn't have to be over the top this time. We can tie a knot wherever we like. I'm just going to go around the side like this. And it's going to start pulling it in. So now the trick here is to make sure that it is tight enough to keep everything together, but not so tight yet that we're going to, like, you know, squeeze everything out. And as you're working, oh, we're just going to pull that up, put that underneath. You might see just here, I've actually lost a little bit of my moss. So what I'm going to do is grab a little bit more. I'm just going to tuck this bit in here so that we don't have any exposed dirt. Okay, so the moss creates a nice layer around the dirt. Pull that all through. And actually I'm just going to chop these guys off. We're going to go around. Oops. Got myself a little bit tangled here. Okay, I'm going to try. Just put this one underneath and tie it up. Nope. Can't see what I'm doing, so I'm hoping I'm getting it there. There we go. And then we'll tie this one. Now it looks a little bit crazy, and there looks like little bits coming off everywhere. It's really up to you how neat yours is going to look in the end, by how much string you put around and how much sphagnum moss you leave exposed. So the rule of thumb is that you want to make sure that there's enough string that it holds it all together, and any more than that it is really up to you. So it's your artistic decision with how much string you put. So we're going to just wrap this around. Now I do around this way to start with, because we've got a couple underneath. So just be mindful of your plant as well. We don't want to pull any of the leaves off, or, you know, break a branch or something. So I'm going to try and embrace all of that sphagnum moss as we go along. If there's any little bits that look like they're almost, you know, going to start to fall out, just tuck them up. And once we've got to the end, we just tie it with another one. It doesn't have to be the same one that you started with. You can just tuck them in or tie it to like a cross piece as well if you can't find an end. Okay, so that's another piece of string. I've got some more string over here. Just cut into pieces. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tie it on to another section here, just to hold it in place there. And then you should, by this stage, yes, we can pick it up. So we can pick it up and start wrapping in any direction you like. Again, just making sure that you're watching your plant. And you'll notice as I keep wrapping, more and more water falls out. Oops, don't get my fingers in there. As we start to squeeze it in as well. Bit of a knot there. Do that little knot. So keep a nice firm grip on your kokedama. You don't need to squeeze it too tight. Now this is the time now that we're starting to shape our kokedama. So you can see my plant's not quite in the middle at the moment. That's okay too, we don't have to have it all perfectly round. If you'd like though, you can start shaping it. So once you've got a couple of pieces of string there, what we can do is we can start giving a little bit of a shape, sorry, a little bit of a shape. And then with our next piece of string, if I want to change the spot where the base is, for example, and I want to say pull it in on one side, then we can do that with our next piece of string. Okay, I'm just going to chop that bit off there. Okay. I'm going to tie it onto this one over here. And wrap it around again. So we want to just tie up any loose bits of sphagnum moss. And round we go. Now there's different coloured twines you can get as well. Make it nice and Christmassy if you'd like, or a particular someone's favourite colour. Just remember, if it's wrapped in plastic, it's not going to. Oh, it's all twisted. It's not going to break down, and so as your plant grows, you can't add another layer onto your Kokedama. So you do want something that's a bit a natural twine or jute or something like that. Okay, and I'm going to stick one more on this. Now, I'll just show you before I stick one more on. So I'm just tying it off again. So you can see here now there's a whole heap of patterns of our string there. I'm going to put one more piece on. And then I think that'll be done for the string. So we tie it on here, and we're going to go round and round. Now if you do decide not to use pieces of string, that you use just one long piece of twine, then you won't have to do, tie all these knots and stuff, and that's okay. Cool. That's cool too. Okay, going round and round, twisting as we go. I'm just looking for that. See how there's a little bit sticking out the side there? So I'm just going to try and make sure I put a couple of, oh, didn't quite make that last one. You know what, I'm going to just undo a little bit. See if I can, there we go. Okay, I'm going to grab two ends, I'm going to tie it off. So there's not many rules with how you tie your string on. Just make sure that you leave enough space around the stem of your plant so that it's not actually cutting into your plant. So there's no string right up against the plant there. And once you've finished, throwing my scissors away. Once we're finished, I'm just going to trim these little ends off, or you can tuck them in, up to you. Take that one off. And there we have our Kokedama all finished, wrapped up, ready to hang. So if you wanted to hang it, you just loop a piece of string or a hook into the back of it and you can hang it up, or you can put it on a saucer ready to just put it on the table, for example. How we care for our Kokedama is that we, once every few weeks, what will happen, you'll feel this is quite heavy now, it's full of water, and you will actually feel it get lighter and lighter and lighter. And with some plants, you'll be able to tell their leaves will start to droop when they need a little bit of extra water, or when you actually feel like it's very light and you can almost throw it up. There's not a lot of weight in this when it's dry. So what you then do is you grab a bucket, and this is my bucket. Usually when it's not full, you grab a bucket, you place your Kokedama in the bucket, and just weight it down with some rocks or something so it's underwater. Fill it up with water and leave it sit for a couple of hours. Once it's sat for a couple of hours, then it needs to just drain, and then you're right to hang it back up or put it back in its place on its plate. So have fun in making Kokedamas. They make great presents, awesome gifts, and enjoy creating some little plant delights. See ya.